Welcome to the Counselling Tutor Podcast, the must-listen-to podcast for students of counselling and psychotherapy. Here are your hosts, Rory Lees-Oakes and Ken Kelly.
Hello, I'm Rory, and with me, as always, is Ken. How are you, Ken, today?
Oh, I am well. Thank you for asking, Rory. And we both hope that you are well listening to this. This is the Counselling Tutor Podcast. You've joined us at episode 171. We have three topics we're going to be covering today, starting with our student check-in, where we look at placements. And we're going to be speaking with Kelly Budd from CPCAB about that. And then we move on to our Digital Counselling Revolution, where we're going to be speaking about the importance of research. And we're going to be closing episode 171 with Practice Matters, where we're going to be looking at assessment and referring to a recent lecture by Emma Chapman.
Yes, absolutely. And earlier on this week, I caught up with Kelly Budd from CPCAB. For those long-term listeners to the podcast, you know that through 2019, we partnered up with CPCAB, which is a UK awarding body for counselling qualifications. Their clarion call is run by counsellors for counsellors, so they're an awarding body of counsellors who run qualifications for counsellor training. And we caught up with Kelly Budd, who has been very, very busy contacting placements and asking them to remember, of course, that counselling is still continuing and it can be done online, and really banging the drum for students. I can't really emphasise this enough, that the CPCAB works so hard on behalf of their students. And we will hear that what Kelly's been up to in the interview. And let's see what she has to say now. And we welcome back Kelly Budd from CPCAB, an awarding body. I'm sure you'll have known Kelly from our podcasts in 2019 and 2020, where we talked all about CPCAB. But Kelly's back with us today for a really important message and just showing just how proactive CPCAB is in the service of students. You've been very busy, haven't you?
We have, Rory. The time has really, really flown by. It doesn't feel as long as it's been since I've been sat here talking to you doing a podcast. So, yeah, it's been quite the year, and we've been very, very busy behind the scenes.
Yes, and you've been particularly busy because with COVID and the extraordinary circumstances that we find ourselves in, there has been, in some cases, difficulty with students on level 4 or higher courses finding placements. So you've been, and you know, CPCAB is always very proactive in my experience, have penned a letter to placements and really done a call to action just to remind placements that counselling and counselling students are still eager, alive, kicking, wanting to help. What have you actually done, Kelly? What have you actually done?
Well, I guess that you kind of summed it up really well, Rory. The kind of one of the things we became very aware of is that as an awarding body, we've got quite a lot of things within our power when it comes to exam design, when it comes to assessment and delivery. But one of the things that was slightly further out of our grasp was the challenges that our students were facing when they were trying to gain placements, or when they were losing their placements and then trying to get back in somewhere else because agencies were locking down or moving to online or telephone work. And it's one of those things that's so key to our level 4 practitioner qualification. But we're always aware that it's almost kind of one step removed from our ability to do much about the situation. We work as much as we can with the counselling community as a whole. But again, it's one of those things where so many people are feeling kind of out of control in this situation. And our first thought was, what could we possibly do about this? How can we help our students not just continuously hit a brick wall when they're going to placements, who, rightly so, have got quite a lot on their minds already without even wanting to think about level 4 placement students. So yeah, we were kind of sat racking our brains thinking, how can we reach out and how can we make contact with these agencies to support and promote our students in these hard times?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I've been reading reports in the press of, you know, sadly, suicides increasing, mental health degenerating. You know, I think the COVID epidemic has impacted on people's well-being dramatically, and it's at times like this we need more counsellors in the field on the ground, whether they work, you know, face to face or whether they work online or by telephone. And you know, agencies, I think, need to think. I'm sure lots of them are about how to service their communities, because now more than ever, it's really, really important that there are, you know, people out there offering counselling. And trainees, of course, are just such a rich seam of high quality people, because they're in the middle of their training, or, you know, they're in on the cusp of that knowledge and that enthusiasm. And you know, you don't find anybody, I don't think, more enthusiastic than a counselling student, really, because they're living this development of becoming a therapist. So what do students and tutors, and indeed agencies, if there's any agencies listening, need to do? You've done the hard work, but what do they need to do?
Well, I guess what we've done to put out there is, what I've done is I've written a very personal letter from me as head of quality CPCAB, talking directly to agencies around the kind of the skill level and the support that our students are getting at the moment in order to still be viable placement students. So what I've done in that letter is I've broken down the requirements that we've put into place to make sure that students are, if they're going to be working online or by telephone, what sort of extra considerations we're kind of supporting them to take into account, what we're doing in terms of making sure that their assessment and their delivery still carries on. Basically kind of giving agencies a picture of what our level 4 students are at the moment. They are just as keen as ever, they are just as knowledgeable as ever, and they are being supported by their centres to adapt to this situation. So where agencies have a need to take placement students on, they really should have confidence in CPCAB students, because they're still getting the support, they're still in their courses, they are still ticking. Like you said, they're still alive and kicking. So essentially that letter is there, it's available on our website. It's something that we've sent out to level 4 tutors, so that a student can literally kind of pick up, figuratively, obviously not physically, this letter and hand it to an agency when they approach them to say, take me on and this is why.
Yeah, so there's a call to action right there, isn't it? You know, if you're a student and you're looking for placement, and maybe you get in a story of, oh, well, you know, we think in counselling training stopped in the UK, get that letter, send it to your placement, you know, be a bit of a pest, you know, keep pushing. And, you know, if you are an agency out there, it must be very, very difficult at the moment. But I think the message from this is it's business as usual in an unusual time, Kelly.
Yeah, absolutely. We want counselling services to thrive during this time. They need to. As you say, it's kind of, there's an unprecedented kind of mental health impact of this COVID situation. We really don't want the counselling profession to dwindle. So for us, making sure that our courses continue, making sure that our students progress, and that in order to progress, they need to be in placements when they get to those higher levels. So for us, this is really important to the profession as a whole, to make sure that people keep getting that support.
Absolutely. So what you've done is you're giving confidence. The letter gives confidence to students that CPCAB has stood solidly behind them, or even shoulder to shoulder, really, shoulder to shoulder. Yeah. And you're giving confidence to the agencies and saying, look, you know, we understand that things are difficult, but, you know, look, we've got an army, and I use the term thoughtfully, of people who want to help in this situation where it's getting really bad. You know, as I said earlier in the interview, mental health is suffering dramatically. In all areas, not just, you know, you could look at any of the fields, be it children's, adolescents, domestic abuse. The evidence is out there to say that people's mental well-being is really being effective, and agencies hopefully are adapting to the online world and offering that service to them. But it's really, really good, and it just goes to prove yet again just how proactive CPCAB are.
I think we try to be. For us, it's a way of saying we understand that our students are going to be important to the profession, and our students are really important to us.
Absolutely.
So we want to do what we can.
Absolutely. And, if you are a student listening to this and you're going through a bit of a difficult time maybe, and you're thinking, I've got so far and I'm not getting far, just hold on to your seat and just say to yourself that you're the future of counselling. In 10 years when I'm, maybe in my allotment, looking at my marrow, I'll leave it there, that I haven't got an allotment just in case I get any letters, but, who knows in 10 years. But, the future is in the hands of students. One of the things that I've recognised when I taught was, how far students went. I've got some friends now, people I taught, and now they're heads of services, they're developing training programs, they're taking on other students. They're the lifeblood. Students are the lifeblood of our profession, and I think sometimes that's forgotten. But Kelly, thank you so much for this initiative, because I think it's going to make a real difference.
Thank you, Rory, and thank you for allowing us to come back and do this recording so that we can get the message as far out there as we can.
Yes, well, no problem. We're always delighted to host CPCAB on our podcast. And in terms of the letter, we'll give you some information of where you can get it. But don't dilly-dally. If you're a student, you're struggling to get a placement, get onto the website, download that letter, send it out, send it to other students. Let's get this letter out and about and in front of the people who really, really matter. And Kelly Budd, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rory. It's been lovely to be here.
Thank you very much to Kelly Budd from CPCAB, and of course for you, Rory, for hosting that interview. And placements, I mean, it's on the mind of most students. If you're not in a placement, you want to be in a placement, you're going to be working towards a placement. If you are in a placement, how do you manage that in the current climate? So all very, very interesting and important information. So moving now into our Digital Counselling Revolution, where we're going to be speaking about the importance of research.
Digital Counselling Revolution.
Yes, well, it comes as a surprise to absolutely nobody that the way that we practice, certainly in 2020, has changed dramatically because of COVID. And a lot of therapy has gone online. And one of the things that interests me is the amount of research that's being generated now by students who are looking at online therapy and the outcomes of it. And I think we cannot underestimate the importance of research in counselling. We are becoming a research-based profession. And one of the reasons that research is so important is because, A, we need to know how much money is being spent, and is it being spent wisely? And this, if you're in the National Health Service or if you're running any form of charity or organisation, you need to know that when you fund anything or you're doing any activity, that is backed up by research, but also the impacts on clients. And up until recently, online and telephone therapy was a niche occupation. It was done by a handful of therapists compared to the many therapists who sat, face to face with clients. And now it's become mainstream, and I think that's going to generate even more research. We're going to find out things that we hadn't known previously. And I think it's really important because commissioners, people who commission services for people like charities or the health service, are looking carefully at research, and they're looking carefully at how effective therapy is. And I think we're going to learn a lot in the coming years. And I know that there's a lot of master's students who are doing research just on online and telephone therapy.
Yeah, it is. And why is this important? Well, it's important because, as Rory has already said, it kind of informs how we would practice and how we would steer practice. It informs how education is steered in training people to work online, what works, what maybe is less effective. We want to be doing what is most effective in service of our clients. But before that, research is really important, and it's important that we read the research so that we understand what's going on in online and telephone counselling. We understand the effectiveness of it. And why? Because of our mindset. If we take our vision of face-to-face therapy that we've had, and we've maybe been working in that for many, many years, and we look at online, we go, oh, but is this going to be as effective? I don't really know. We can colour or contaminate maybe the counselling relationship with our own views of, oh, I don't know if this is good enough. Is this not maybe just second best? We can't meet face to face, so we now have to meet online. That we just don't have any choice in the matter. It's not going to be as good, but we'll do it anyway. Well, if we read the research, then we can kind of change our mindset so that we can be more confident, and we can kind of, I guess, project that confidence when we're speaking to our clients, because we don't want to be sowing doubts in the seeds of our clients.
Absolutely. And I also think that one of the things that sometimes is missed is there's a lot of chatter within counselling circles about modalities of therapy and how we deliver therapy and what good therapy should look like. And actually, the best people to ask about the quality of therapy are clients. They're the best people to ask because they're the people that we serve. And I think a lot of research now is going to focus on client experience, their subjective experience. And I think we may be very, very surprised in what clients are saying. Some of the research I've read recently says that clients actually like online therapy and telephone therapy. And the reason for that is one of convenience. People live busy lives. Having to go to therapy, we think about the 50-minute hour in therapy. But actually, it could take some clients 3 hours. They may have to travel. They may have to, they go through the therapy and then they may have to travel back. That could be 3 hours out of someone's day. And also, what about people who are, people who can't get out of the house, people who may struggle getting out of the house, people who may need therapy to be able to get out of the house. I read a lot about, what about clients who are, may have agoraphobia, fear of going out? Aren't we colluding with them by doing online therapy? Well, it may be that those clients wouldn't have gone to a therapist anyway if they were frightened of going out, and now they can access therapy. And maybe interventions can be developed to help people with agoraphobia, or the service is going to be more accessible. And I think that this is going to be a big area of research. And I think we need to consistently revisit research, because I think in the coming years, it will tell us a lot just about how effective online therapy is. And of course, where it's not effective. It's not all going to be, it's, sweetness and light and it's going to work all the time. There are going to be specific client groups who really prefer face-to-face therapy. But it's interesting. It's a growing arm of research, and it's essential we keep up with it.
It is. And I did my online and telephone counselling training back in 2013. And at that time, we were referring to the research that was available, and it was very thin on the ground back in 2013. I can share with you. We now run, within Counselling Tutor, we run an online and telephone counselling course, and there is so much more research available. When we were putting the course together, we were kind of drawing on the research. And I can share with you that since we've built the course, we have had to go back and revisit the course a number of times to update the research as new research is actually coming in. So that research has definitely picked up. And it gives us, I guess, evidence-based indicators of, like you say, Rory, what's working, what isn't working. We need to know, if a client's got a certain presentation, maybe that presentation is not going to suit working online. We need to understand where those boundaries lie. And as Carl Rogers said, the facts are always friendly.
He did say that. He did say that. And I think as we progressed, through the next few years. And, let's be clear, online and telephone counselling is going to be a big part now of the counselling picture in the world, not just in the UK, because once something's been adopted, people like it. People get used to it, and they want it. So it's not going to be a flash in the pan. It's going to settle. We're going to probably have a blended economy of face-to-face, online. It may be that some clients have a mixture. So the research that underpins that's going to be really, really important. And I think that in the next few years, we're going to see real big data sets on the effectiveness of it, and we're going to know more about it. I think a lot of people moved in. You're absolutely right with the online mindset, Ken. Moved in thinking, well, I'm going to have to do it, but I'm not quite sure about it. And I think that by looking at research, it's reassuring to know that actually the clients benefit from it. They like it. And what client groups may be more difficult to reach with online therapy, it really informs how people practice.
It ties neatly into our next topic as well. We were about to jump into Practice Matters, where we're going to be speaking about assessment. And assessment is I guess, considered a measuring tool. And there are measuring tools that kind of you will revisit on a session-by-session basis with your client, kind of checking in where they're at and what kind of benefits they're getting from the therapy that they're engaging in. And it's going to be really interesting as all that data is collected and brought together. And there's a number of organizations busy with that process right now, bringing that information together. And I for one, I look forward to reading that and looking at what that looks like as I'm enjoying the research that's coming in at the moment. It's an interesting topic. Moving on to Practice Matters, where we're going to be speaking about assessment. We had a recent lecture with Emma Chapman, so let's dive straight into Practice Matters.
Practice Matters.
Yes, assessments. I think that every practitioner should be well versed in assessment of clients. And when I talk about assessment, I mean the ability to be able to listen to the client, listen to the presenting issues, and to think about things like areas of risk, think about whether the modality of therapy and the experience of the therapist matches the client. There have been times in my practice where I've done an initial assessment and the client's spoken about difficulties they're having, and I think, I don't think this is my skill set. I think I need to refer the client on to a different therapist. And assessment forms the backbone of good practice. We sometimes think of assessments in terms of things like doing PHQ-9 or CORE, or Edinburgh Depression Scale, which is one for postpartum assessment for women who've recently had children, babies, and may suffer postnatal depression. But actually, assessment is a far greater piece of work, because what you're doing is you're saying to yourself, can I work with this client? Is the information I have, my training, enough to be able to work with this client? And also, you're asking, are there any risk areas? Are there any real serious risk areas that I might have to take into consideration? And of course, one that comes up, maybe a client who wants to take their own life, self-harm. It may be harm to others. It may be that you're working with someone who may be doing harm to others. So assessment is important, and assessment should be done all the time. It shouldn't just be done on the first meeting. I think a part of a clinician's toolbox is to have that assessment cog whirring away. So if something new comes up, you can take a clinical view. And I also think that assessment and judgment gets mixed up. We're not judging our clients when we're assessing them. We're taking a view on what's going on for them. How can we help? Do we need to make a referral? And do we need to make a more substantial intervention? For instance, clients who may, I mentioned self-harm, or maybe clients who wants to maybe thinking of taking their own life, or a client who may be that through the course of therapy you realise may need more psychiatric help. They may be hearing voices, waking nightmares, and it may be that they need a different form of support. So assessment is really important, and I think we should all be assessing on a regular basis.
And it's an interesting topic, comes up from time to time. In our Facebook group, you'll find that. Jump onto Facebook, type in Counselling Tutor, we're right there, come and join us. And in the conversation, there is sometimes a feeling that assessment is not a person-centered exercise, because you're now asking the client questions. I guess you're being quite directive in saying, I need you to answer these questions. But as you've quite rightly laid out there, Rory, that we need to assess the person's ability to engage in therapy. We need to assess our own competence in our ability to be able to serve this client, give them the best service. But there's another side to assessment as well. So that's kind of the assessment gate of coming in to the counselling. The other side of assessment is, how am I doing? How am I doing as a counsellor? How is this therapy working for you? Is it effective? Is it non-effective? And we spoke in our last topic when we were speaking about Digital Counselling Revolution. We spoke about the importance of research. And assessment is a great way to gather information. It's where people are feeding back qualitatively or quantitatively, depending on the research, that giving their indication of how it is. So there is that assessment, and as you at the door coming in, and as you quite rightly say, Rory, throughout the process, you might be checking in with them. And if you think now, taking that back to the person-centered idea, we're doing that in person-centered therapy anyway. I wonder how that feels for you. I wonder how these sessions are working out for you. That is a form of assessment.
Yes, the 6-week review is a form of assessment. And just hearing you mention person-centered therapy there, Ken, Emma in her lecture did allude to the fact that, they don't, historically they didn't assess in person-centered. I don't actually think that's true. I don't think they called it assessment. Yes. I don't think they called it assessment. They just called it something else, or didn't call it anything. I just don't think they had a word for it. But they did a form of assessment. And I think also assessment is super useful for supervision, because when you're assessing, you're looking at the facts as they're presented to you. And you can take a view of how the client is doing, what's going on for the client, and you can take that to supervision. And my supervisor will say, well, what came up in the 6-week review? If you're reviewing every 6 weeks, which I think is good practice, what came up there? And also you can take your hunches. I think that taking your hunches to supervision is really useful. Part of the assessment may be to say, this is what I think is going on for the client, and to get another practitioner's view on that. And maybe that then takes hold in you. You go back to your clients and work in a different way. And of course, assessment means different things to different modalities. If you're transactional analysis therapist, you may be around, the kind of elements within the therapy, such as scripts or time stamping or ego states. If you're a CBT therapist, it might be about the homework, the intervention, the negative thoughts. So I think assessment can mean different things in different modalities, but it's a really important discipline. And I also think if you're a student, although your client should be kind of assessed before you see them to make sure that they are clients you can work with at your level of training, I think having some idea of assessment is important, just in case what they're bringing is different to what they presented with when they were initially assessed. That happens a lot.
I like how you've brought that in, Rory. That, as a student in placement, there should be an assessment process in place to make sure that the right clients get to you, and that's that gatekeeping assessment. Am I competent? Is this placement student competent to work with the presentation? That is basically what that assessment is assessing. But the student will then, of course, be assessing, is this working for you? Am I still competent to work with the presenting issue? Has the client maybe brought up something that is outside of my competence? So even without having a paper and writing things down, we're assessing as we go. And I like how you said that the word assessment means different things to different people. And then you mentioned students. And then I thought about the assignments assignments get assessed. I don't know this. We're not talking about counseling now. We're talking about what is assessment? It's basically making sure that something falls within certain parameters. That's what assessment is. It's making sure that something that falls within certain parameters. And really, really useful. Post-grad, when I graduated as a counsellor, I worked as an admissions manager for a medical group for some time. And part of my ongoing training was assessment, deep assessment and risk management. And assessment can go really, really deep. When you're starting to go into triages and things like that, it can get really, really deep. But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be that deep. As long as you have a gate assessment, making sure you're the right person to be working with the client, using the right modality, that they are okay to engage in therapy. And then, of course, how am I doing? I want to do the assessment. I want to know how the client is doing, how it's working out for them, the effectiveness of therapy.
Absolutely. And, for qualified colleagues, if you're writing a case study for accreditation, for the many ethical bodies here in the UK and indeed the world, part of that is you're going to have to make an assessment. You may have to write a piece of work about where you think the client is, what's going on for the clients, and that is a form of assessment. So what I would say is, don't think assessment as a clinical, hard-edged clinical tool. Think of it as just a way of seeing your client and asking yourself some fundamental questions. Is my skill set matching the client's presentation? Is there an element of risk that needs to be addressed here? Is there something going on for me? I think sometimes, as we've talked a lot through the years about transference and erotic transference, part of that assessment may be that perhaps I shouldn't be working with this client. Perhaps I need to refer this client on for personal reasons. So it's a really important part. But Emma's lecture was brilliant, and it answers a lot of questions. So if you get to see that, I think everybody's practice would benefit from it.
Yeah, I like that. I think as we kind of end this episode, it's important to say Rory and I bring the topics. We discuss them as colleagues. That's what this podcast is about. We're not claiming to be the experts on all of the topics we discuss, but what we do is we find the experts for our lectures. And the lecture that Emma gave is in our CPD library. CPD library, if you're a qualified practitioner, the library is absolutely jam-packed full of lectures from experts in their field on topics that sharpen our competences as practitioners. And you can get more information on the Counsellor CPD library by going to counsellingtutor.com.
Absolutely. What an interesting set of topics in the podcast. We started off with Kelly Budd advocating for students and doing a really good job. That's Kelly Budd from CPCAB, a really great interview, and a really fab guest. We love interviewing Kelly. And then we talked about the importance of research in the Digital Counselling Revolution, and just alluded to the fact that this is a whole new world that people are going into, and it's one that's developing, and it's developing by what we find from research. And finally, assessment, the importance of working within your competencies and managing risk for clients and making sure they're getting the very best service that you can give them. And as always, stay grounded, stay safe, and join the digital revolution.
Take the stress out of your counselling studies and get the support of Rory and I by joining us in the Counselling Study Resource. Counselling Study Resource, or CSR for short, is the world's most comprehensive assignment guidance and study support resource for students just like you of counselling and psychotherapy. See how Counselling Study Resource can help you. Visit counsellingtutor.com. That's counsellingtutor.com.
Thank you for listening to the Counselling Tutor Podcast. Find the show notes for this episode on our website at www.counsellingtutor.com.